So, yeah, Bob Gimel. A widow who was married to a Kohen Gadol or a divorcee or Kalutz who was married to an ordinary Kohen, even if they were only betrothed, they may not eat Truma. Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon, however, validated, and if they was widowed or divorced, it was from marriage. If it was a marriage, they are disqualified, but if it's betrothal, they are qualified. A Kohen Gadol may not marry a widow, neither a widow from betrothal nor a widow for marriage, and he may not marry a Bogeres. Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon, however, validate marriage with a Bogeres, and he may not marry the victim of a blow. If he betrothed a widow and was then appointed Kohen Gadol, he may marry her. It happened that Rishu ben Gamliel betrothed Marsha, the daughter of Basos, and the king then appointed him to be Kohen Gadol, and he married her. If a widow awaiting her Yavam fell to an ordinary Kohen, and he was then appointed to be Kohen Gadol, even if he had already performed Mama with her, he may not marry her. If a Kohen Gadol's brother died, he performed Kalutza, but not Yibum. Okay.
One more for you.
What is? No. An ordinary Kohen may not marry an alonus unless he has a wife or children. You said even if he has a wife or children, he may not marry an alonus because she is the zona mentioned in the Torah. The sages, however, say a zona refers only to a female convert or a free slave woman and one who engaged in forbidden cohabitation. Okay.
Okay, right. Lo yibatel adam mipiria urvia. A person may not abstain from having children. Ela im kain yesh lo banim, unless he has children from a previous marriage.
Yeah.
So basically, what this is saying is that if a person has the opportunity to have children, so if he had been married for a long time and did not fulfill priya revia, then he cannot. Then he must look to remarry somebody else who is capable of having children. Beis Shammai omrim shnei zacharim, ubeis Hillel omrim zachar and nekeva. So the machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai about what constitutes having fulfilled the mitzvah of Pri Revia. And Beis Shammai say it's two sons. Where do they learn it from? They learn from Moshe Rabbeinu, because Moshe Rabbeinu had two sons, and that was it. And then he stopped having children. Beis Hillel say Zachar and Nekeva Shnimar Zachar and Nekeva Bara'am. In order to keep the world going, you have to have another male and female. So you got to add that to the population count. It's just a practical thing. You've got to have a boy and a girl before you have fulfilled the mitzvah. Shnimar Zachar and Nekeva Bara'am. An interesting point over there that I'll leave it till the end of the Mishnah. Nasa Isha. If a person married a wife, v'shaha ima eser shanim, and he was remained married to her for 10 years, v'lo yalda, and she has not given birth after 10 years, eina rashai libatel. He may not waive his obligation to have children. So if he's not having children with this wife, then he's got to find another wife that he can do it with. Gerusha, if he decides that he's going to divorce this wife, who hasn't given birth in 10 years. She is permitted to marry another man because maybe the problem's with him, not with her. So since we don't know who is the infertility problem, both of them are permitted to remarry. And the second husband is also allowed to stay with her for 10 years before giving up on having children. Before concluding that she's incapable of having children. And if a woman has a miscarriage, the clock resets because clearly she was fertile and something just went wrong. Okay, so then you so you restart the count from when she had the miscarriage. The mitzvah of having children is specifically given to men, but not to women. A lot of ink spilled over that particular point. A lot of drushes about how a woman is actually putting herself in sakana in order to have children, and we don't want to. We can't force a person to put herself in danger. But nonetheless, even though it says, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Bracha brings up the point of Omer al shneim hu Omer vayvarech osam Elohim vayomer lahem Elohim pru urvu, that this is in Bereshis. the first mitzvah that Hashem gives to Adam and Eve is to go out there and be fruitful and multiply, and it was said to both of them. So according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Barakah, it's a mitzvah that was given to women as well. But the halacha follows the Chachamim that it's only a mitzvah on the man. It's an interesting. This was an interesting situation that whether it's one one boy and one girl or two boys. I have a friend who he married a widow. She had like four children from her first marriage before her husband tragically died. And so he married the widow and he brought up these children all as his own. And he also had a couple of girls from this marriage. And he unfortunately his marriage ended in divorce, and he started to start dating again, and he's now in his late 50s, and he's saying like, okay, so he brought up all of his ex-wife's children like his own children, and they call him dad, and he's got a very close relationship with them. And they're boys and girls there. And but of his own biological children, he's only got girls. And he like asking the shy, he had to go and ask the Shaila, like, do I actually have to date somebody who is like capable of having children? And he was saying to us, I mean, I think I would rather have my teeth pulled out than start having babies again.
Wow.
So anyway, Lamasa, I don't think that he's taking that route.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Mm.
Anyway, Almana la Kohen Gadol. So so now this Mishnah now is dealing with what happens when an illicit marriage is illicit in terms of it's against the halacha, but it's not an erva. Specifically, we're talking about a marriage between a Kohen and somebody that he's not allowed to be married to, whether it's a Kohen Gadol and a widow, or a Grusha and a Chulutza to a regular Kohen. And we know about his wife that she is not allowed to eat truma because she's Pasal Kahuna. So she will not be allowed to eat truma. Now, what happens with her slaves that she brings into the marriage? Now, that we know that the property of a Kohen and slaves, non-Jewish slaves, are considered his property. So they are permitted to eat truma, just like his animals are permitted to eat truma, and also his slaves are permitted to eat truma. Okay. Now, the same would go for slaves that are brought in to the marriage by his wife, and in it, and we'll see that in this case over here, because she is not permitted to the Kohana, this is going to drop some different halachas on her slaves. So the two different. Let's just quickly talk about what types of slaves we've got, what type of property a woman can bring into a marriage. There's nichse milug. So nichse milug are things that the woman owns, and it remains her property, but the husband has right of usage. So, for example, if she has a field, if she owns a field, then the husband is allowed to use the field, but it remains her property, and if he invests any money into the property and the marriage ends in a divorce, then she takes whatever happens out there. But we'll see that explicitly inside this Mishnah. And then there's also Tzon Barzel, which is something that is given to him, that's specifically given to him as a security, and he can invest in them, and any gain that he gets in them is his. So look back into our Mishnah. Ichnisa lo avdei milug ve'avdei tzon barzel. She brought both types of slaves into the marriage, and the his and hers kind of slaves. Avdei milug, the avdei milug are her property, but he has the right of usage. Lo yochlu b'truma, and therefore they are not allowed to eat truma. Avdei Tzon Barzel Yochlu, but the ones that are Tzon Barzel, which are effectively you think of them as the his slaves, and they since they become his property, they are permitted to eat truma. The Elohein Avdei Melug. So what is the definition of Avdei Melug? Im Mesu Mesula. If they died, it's her problem, and she takes the loss. Im Hosiru Hosirula. And if they increased in value, then it's her gain. Even though the husband has to feed them, they are not allowed to eat truma, even though he has the responsibility of feeding them. So what's the definition of tzon barzel? Im mesu mesu lo. If they died, they're his. It's his loss. Mosiru hisiru lo. And if they increased in value, then they increased for him. And since he is chayav to he is responsible for them. Hare elu yochlu b'chuma. So these ones, even though they came into the marriage from her side, but because the technical the responsibility is on the husband in this case, he is allowed to feed them truma. Now, Mishnah Base talks in the more happy case kind of situation where you have a regular Bas Yisrael who's married to a Kohen. Avadim, and she brought, and this is a permitted marriage, and she brought slaves into the marriage. Nice and simple. It doesn't matter what happens because she is his legal wife, and she's also permitted to eat truma. So her
Mhm.
slaves are also permitted
Right.
truma. So there's no problem. Bas Kohen Shenises Israel, and if it's the reverse direction where the daughter of a Kohen married a Israel, well, as soon as she marries the Israel, she loses the right to eat truma. So if she v'ichnisa lo bein avdei milog bein avdei ton barzel hare elu lo yochlu b'truma. So these slaves cannot eat any truma. So um, that's the more simple case, and it probably would have been a better idea to start the parak with that Mishnah rather than the first Mishnah because that kind of set the tone of what happens with slaves. Anyway,
Okay.
that's that. Let's
Okay.
go back to Perek Dalet.
Dalit, Dalit Aleph. If someone performed Kalitza with his Yevama and then she was found to be pregnant and she gave birth, if the child is capable of living, he's permitted to marry her relatives. And she is permitted to marry his relatives, and he has not disqualified her from the priesthood. If the child is not capable of living, he is forbidden to marry her relatives, and she is forbidden to marry his, and he has disqualified her from the priesthood. If someone married his Yavama and then she was found to be pregnant and she gave birth, if the child is capable of living, he must discharge her, and they are obligated to bring an offering. However, if the child is not capable of living, he may retain her. If it is not clear whether it is a 9-month child or the former husband or the 7-month child or the latter, he must divorce her. The child is legitimate, and they're obligated to bring a pending guilt offering. If a woman waiting a Yavam inherited property, both the Bet Shammai and Beis Hillel agree that he may sell it or give it away. If she died, what is to be done with the ketubah and with the property that comes in and goes out with her? Beis Shammai says the husband's heirs divide it with the father's heirs. Beis Hillel says the property remains where it was held. The ketubah is in the possession of the husband's heirs, and the property that comes in and goes out with her is in the possession of her father's heirs. Hey, hey, simple enough. Hey, Megillah. Okay, Megillah, we have Beis Daled. All are qualified to read the Megillah except one who is deaf, an imbecile, or a minor. Rabbi Hugh declares a minor qualified. We may not read the Megillah until circumcised or perform ritual immersion or sprinkle purification water. Similarly, a woman who counts a day, corresponding to a day, may not immerse herself until the sun has risen. However, if any of them did so after the first ray of dawn appeared, the act is valid. The entire day is valid for reading the Megillah, reciting the Hallel, blowing the shofar, taking the lulav, reciting the Musaf offering, prayer offering, the Musaf sacrifices, the confession recited with the offering of the bulls, um, and the confession recited with the tithe, the confession of Yom Kippur, leaning the hands on the head of sacrificial animals, slaughter of sacrifices, waving of sacrifices, bringing near the vessel with the meal offering to the altar, taking a handful of the meal offering and burning it, nipping the nip of the burnt offerings, receiving the blood of the sacrifices, sprinkling the blood of sacrifices, causing the sota to drink, cutting the neck of the heifer, and the cleansing of the metzorah. The entire night is valid for the reaping of the omer and the burning of sacrificial fats and limbs. This is the general rule. Any rite which has to be done by day may be performed throughout the day. Any rite which is to be done at night may be performed throughout the night. Okay.
Ja,
And
Shalem.
on to Dalet. Okay, we have Daled Vav. If one consecrated his possessions, and among them were things suitable for communal offerings, these things should be given to the artisans for their wages. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Said Ben Azai to him, this is not the same method described above. Rather, they set aside from these things an amount equal to the artisan's wages and redeem them with funds set aside for the artisan's wages. Then they give them to the artisans and their wages and repurchase them with funds for the new truma. If one consecrated his possessions, and among them there was an animal suitable for the altar, either male or female, Rabbi Eliezer says, the male should be sold to those needing burnt offerings, and the female should be sold to those needing peace offerings. The proceeds should be used with the rest of the property for the upkeep of the temple. Rabbi Yeshua says the males themselves should be brought as burnt offerings, but the females should be sold to those needing peace offerings. Burnt offerings should be brought with their proceeds, and the rest of the property should be used for the upkeep of the temple. Rabbi Akiva says, I prefer Rabbi Eliezer's view over Rabbi Yeshua's because Rabbi Eliezer applies his logical method uniformly where Rabbi Yeshua differentiates. Says Rabbi Papas, I have been taught that both views are correct regarding one who consecrates explicitly. The halakha is according to Rabbi Eliezer, whereas one who consecrates without explicit designation, the halakha is according to Rabbi Yeshua. If one consecrated his possessions, and among them were things suitable for the altar, such as wines, oil, or fowl, Rabbi Elazar says they should be sold to those needing each particular item, and those fishes should be used for both offerings. But the rest of the possessions should go to the upkeep of the temple. Once every 30 days, they would.
That's it.
That was okay.
Yeah.
And see, no, okay, Shvius. Daled Vav. If one clips vines or cuts reeds, Reb Yossi Gili says he must keep distant one hand breadth. Rebbe Akiva says he cuts in his usual manner with an axe, a sickle, or sword, whatever he prefers. A tree which split may be tied up in the seventh year, not so that it should be healed, but that it should not continue. From when on when one eat tree fruits in the seventh year, the unripe ones when they are reddened, one may eat his bread with them in the field. Once they begin ripening, he may take them into his house, and so also in the other years of the 7 year cycle, he is liable to tithe. Unripe grapes, once they have been purchased, they have produced liquid, one may eat his bread with them in the field. Once they have ripened, he may take them into his house, and also in the other years of the 7 year cycle, he's liable to tithe. Okay, we have Caleb. Okay, Caleb, Kaf Daled Yud Gimel. There are three sheets. A sheet that is designed for lying on, which is one on is susceptible to becoming tummy with midrash tuma. A sheet that is designed for use as a curtain is susceptible to becoming tummy with corpse tuma, and a sheet of pictures is towel from any form of tuma. There are three towels: a towel for hands susceptible to becoming tummy with midrash tuma, a towel used for scrolls susceptible to becoming tummy with corpse tuma, and one used for shrouds or the lyres or the Levites from this towel from any form of tuma. There are three gauntlets. The gauntlets of hunters of animals and birds is susceptible to becoming tummy with midrash tuma. The gauntlet used for locusts is susceptible to becoming tummy with corpse tuma. And the gauntlet of summer fruit dryers is towel from any form of tuma.
Okay.
And last we have Shuas. Okay, Aleph Zion. This applies equally to Yisraelim, Kohanim, and the anointed Kohen. What is the difference between Yisraelim, Kohanim, and the anointed Kohen? Only that the blood of the bull atones for the Kohen, for the tumah of the temple, and its holy things. Reb Shimon says, just as the blood of the he-goat, which is sacrificed inside, atones for Israel, so the blood of the bull atones for the Kohanim. Just as the confession of the he-goat, which is sent away to Azazel, atones for Israel, so the confession of the bull atones for the Kohanim. Awareness of tumah is of two types, which are in reality four. If one became tumah and was aware of it, and afterwards the tumah escaped his awareness, but he remembered the holy thing, or awareness of the holy thing escaped him, but he remembered the tumah, or both escaped his awareness, and he ate holy things being unaware, and he became aware after he ate, he is required to bring a variable sin offering. And if one became tumah and was aware of it, and afterwards the tumah escaped his awareness, but he remembered the temple, or awareness of the temple escaped him, but he remembered the tumah, or both of them escaped his awareness, and he entered the temple being unaware, and he became aware after he came out, he is required to bring a variable sin offering. Both the one who enters the courtyard and the one who enters the addition to the courtyard are liable, for they do not enter the city or to the temple courtyards except for the king, prophet, or Urim Tumim, and a Sanhedrin of 71 with two thanksgiving offerings and with song. The base didn't walk with the two Thanksgiving offerings after them, and all Israel after them. The inner one was eaten, and the outer one was burnt. Any addition not made with all these, whoever enters therein is not liable for it. If one became tummy in the courtyard of the tomb, escaped his memory, though he remembered the
That's it.
temple.
We're done. We're done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Tu
Okay.
B'Shvat is Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday,
Monday.
Monday today.
No, next week.
Next week. Yeah. Okay. I got the weeks mixed up. Okay.